Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey. Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Hey, Gary.
John, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. How's that one of your favorite places in this area this week? Holly Oaks, driving.
Oh, yeah.
Off-road driving.
Yeah, I couldn't make that program. Wanted to go to it, but so it was good?
Yeah, driving the Ford Expedition Timberline and the Explorer Timberline. And it still amazes me that people like to take perfectly good cars and put them on surfaces that they don't belong, but can be handled. But
yeah.
Be that as it may.
That's right.
It's good fun.
Well, let's get on with the show. Let's bring in our colleague, Gary Witzenburg, freelancer extraordinaire, president of the North American Car and Truck of the Year Awards. Gary, great to have you on the show again.
Good to be here, John. Thanks for asking me.
Sure thing. And we're bringing in our special guest right now, Melissa Lacko from Nissan Research and Development, coming into us from, where are you, Melissa? Chandler, Arizona, did you say?
I live in Chandler, but I'm out of Stanfield, Arizona. That's where Proving Grounds is located.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And we're desperate to learn more about this Nissan Z. How much development work took place out there in Arizona?
Quite a bit. So a lot of early development was done in Japan. So of course it's kind of a joint partnership between Japan design and testing as well as from the US side. So we have a lot of discussions early on about targets, about what we want the car to achieve, and a bunch of different dynamic and sometimes static categories. And then once we have that agreement, then we work with their Japanese counterparts. You know, they'll send us a car, we'll drive it, we'll test it, we'll work with the power. We have a performance team for powertrain as well as chassis and NVH here as well. So there's a lot of U.S. involvement, but it's really a joint project that's led by Japan, but there's a lot of U.S. voice in this as well.
You know, this latest version of the Z is very interesting. You know, there was the 240, 260, 280, 300, blah, blah, blah. This seems to get back to the original. I mean, compared to all those other ones, that obviously was a conscious decision. Why did you guys decide to go that way?
So that might be a little more of a product planning question. I'm more on the testing development side, but my understanding is we really wanted this car to be kind of an accumulation of all of the different Z products we've had throughout the model life. So it wasn't necessarily a particular model that we wanted to aim for. It was really using the best qualities and best aspects that our customers really love and have grown to become loyal to over the years. And that's what we wanted to kind of put all together into one.
Melissa, as you're doing this development, this co-development with Japan, how much of it was physical, where you would actually have properties to work on, and how much of it was digital, whereby you were either, communicating via computer, or they were downloading files to you guys and you were sending files back to them?
Well, it is a bit of a mix, but super early on, a lot of the digital stuff is done in Japan. From our team side, we're more of the physical testing and development. So of course we'll take data, we'll share data with them. There are a lot of Zoom meetings. In the past, we usually try to have our counterparts from Japan come to the US to do some joint activities, or sometimes we'll go there for some other development activities as well. But because of COVID, it made it a little bit more difficult. So it was maybe a lot more Zoom than usual that was done. But from our side at the Proving Grounds, we have a huge oval. We have all these different road services and different road courses to test on. So it was a lot more physical from our side. And then working with Japan and, of course, the performance teams here, it's really kind of fine-tuned to get the car to where we wanted to get it. So we do on-property testing as well as plenty of off-property testing as well. Phoenix City public roads, as well as we do California testing. driven it to Death Valley for testing. I did a long drive with the powertrain team from Phoenix all the way up to Bemidji, Minnesota to do cold weather testing. And it was negative 29 degrees when we were in Bemidji. And I've never experienced that being an Arizona native. So I'm pretty sure the car did better than I did there in those cold
I'm a Michigan native, and I don't think I've experienced minus 29.
That was painful, but we make sure we put the car through all of its paces, and Japan does a lot of testing there as well. So there is extensive amounts of physical testing.
Melissa, is the dynamic development different for different markets? With the Japanese car handled differently than the American car that you did, for example?
I think for other programs, sometimes there might be some minor differences. For Z, though, it is my understanding that the performance will be the same. I would need to confirm that point, but I don't think there's going to be tuning differences between our car or Japan. So that's why it's really a joint effort. U.S. market is going to be, my understanding, to be a large part of our sales. And so they really wanted to make sure that we achieved what we wanted for our U.S. customers and kind of looked at the overall voice for who we think will be buying this car.
Melissa, I got to drive the car briefly. One of the things that stood out for me for a 2-seat sports car is it's pretty comfortable. I mean, the ride is fairly compliant. So you must have made a decision that you weren't going to go for an all-out track car, even though it handles well, but you wanted something that somebody could use every single day, not just, for a weekend warrior kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, we wanted this car really to be for the daily enthusiast. We want you to be comfortable driving it daily. It's very livable for those daily commutes or even long drives. I mean, I drove it. It was probably like a 10-day trip for all the different stops we had to make. And I was in the Z the entire time, and it was quite comfortable for a sports car. So it's great for the daily commute, really fun for those winding road sections. We did a lot of development for that sort of scene. And yeah, it's also more than capable for, kind of a weekend sort of fun track day. But we really wanted to focus in on making it livable for the daily drive, as well as giving you that really fun performance. So even though it is comfortable, I don't know if you got to drive it on the track or in a more spirited sort of scene, but it handles wonderfully. It's so much fun. Yeah.
Not yet. Hoping to at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about the suspension. It's not adaptive suspension, right? Or do you have some sort of shock valving variation or something like that?
No, we don't. Actually, we did switch from a twin tube to a monotube damper. So that does provide like better damping and better response, but there's nothing unique with the, or like adaptive or kind of constantly changing with the suspension. The geometry is mostly the same, except we did increase the caster angle to improve that straight line ability. But other than that, we did increase spring rates, and then as well as the sway bar stiffness and kind of damping as well. I know it might feel softer, but we actually did increase a lot of those. It might be partially because the car is a little bit heavier than the previous one as well. So it was a lot of tuning. We wanted to kind of balance out the performance. We really focused on that aspect, but we wanted to make it livable.
So I had the opportunity to drive it on some fun roads, and the thing that struck me was the throttle response. So, I mean, John mentioned, the last generation had a 3.7 liter V6 that produced 332 horsepower. Now you've got a 3-liter a twin turbo that produces 400 horsepower. Talk about the powertrain and what went into the decisions and the thinking of going to that extreme.
Yeah. So what we did do, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we did carry over the engine from the Q50, Q60 Red Sport. So we didn't develop something all new, and that was one of the decisions we wanted to make to kind of keep the cost manageable. So you get a 400 horsepower car for $40,000. So we took an engine that we thought would work great. We did modify it a little bit. We added a recirculation valve to improve that throttle response, as well as that off throttle linearity. So we did make some minor tweaks, but overall we did improve acceleration performance by about 20% from the 370. And we also added launch control that we have on the automatic as well as the manual. I think it's our first time doing launch control on a manual transmission. So it's pretty fun because we do power on shifting. So wide open throttle, you can kind of change gears, not kind of, but you can change gears, which is really fun. Just make sure you're in launch control mode because we use the electric variable valve timing to kind of reduce the RPMs once you put the clutch in. So it's not like you're slamming it through the gears when you're in launch control, wide open throttle. Once you push in the clutch, the RPMs will drop through that electric variable valve timing. So we did a lot of fun little tweaks like that. We really wanted to kind of give it that fun, puppy sort of feel, and I feel like we really did a lot to achieve that. So
I noticed the transmission has a computational. Wait a minute, I got the wrong question. It's a centrifugal pendulum absorber, and I'm not sure. Even as a former development manager myself, I'm not sure I understand what that is. So what does that do?
So basically, it's a way to reduce engine vibration kind of at lower speeds. So sometimes at lower RPMs, certain engines can create kind of a higher vibration, which can make it uncomfortable to sit in. Sometimes you can get some gear chatter or kind of a booming noise. So this is a way, like we have it in our AT and also in our MT. So like on the manual transmission and automatic transmission, So on the manual, on the dual mass flywheel, it's basically these steel plates that have slots in them that are attached to the flywheel. And so because of the slots, they're able to move around a little bit. And they're tuned specifically for the engine at specific RPMs to then absorb some of that vibration and kind of counteract it by sliding back and forth. And that's about as in-depth on that topic as I can get. So it's not my area of expertise, but that's my understanding of how that does work.
Melissa, it looks like you guys have more up to go potentially on this, that there could be performance variants of it. One of the giveaways to me, or at least I think I'm reading into that, is on the front fascia. It looks like there could be air curtains for the front wheels, but they're not there. So my natural question would be, is there another variant of this car that's kind of, and there you can see it, just below the headlights, that vertical line. Looks to me like air vents could go in there. So it seems like there could be a high performance variant of this car coming. What can you tell us?
I can tell you nothing about future product development. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. I cannot comment any further on future products.
Okay, that tells me enough right there. The fact that you can't comment on it is an indication to me, at least, there's nothing there.
Also, as a lowly engineer, I'm pretty far down on the totem pole. So there's lots of discussions that happen that I am not a part of as well. So
sure thing. Fair enough. I'm not trying to push too much, but I just thought I'd ask anyway.
Yeah, I understand the need to ask.
Melissa, how important was mass reduction in this car? Because it seems to me that the car is very stiff, and there's good rigidity to it, and it seemed to me that sort of that is counter to a very light car. I mean, how did you do that?
So in fact, the weight did go up a little bit from the 370 by about 150 pounds. So in order to get a 400 horsepower engine, we added extensive amounts of cooling as well to maintain that engine performance. So we did radiator increase up, radiator thickness increase, as well as fan motor increase. We added intercooler radiator plus engine oil cooler and a transmission cooler. And then as well as we had to increase the rigidity of the body as well to maintain the increase in power. So that's about 40 pounds as well. So it did increase in weight, but if you are able to drive the 370 with the all new Z back to back, it does not feel heavier at all. And, for 150 pounds, you actually do get quite a bit of performance added to it. So it doesn't feel so heavy. So I don't know what your impressions were, but when driving the two back to back, at least my impression is it doesn't really feel so heavy.
Oh, it didn't feel heavy at all. I'm just wondering. I mean, so whether you were given the task of helping reduce body mass, let's say. I mean, did you use aluminum for closure panels? Did you things like that?
So we did change the casing on the on our 9AT. So that went to a magnesium casing. That was one way we used to reduce weight a little bit. Also, the hood went to aluminum as well. But again, we wanted to kind of balance cost as well. We really wanted to kind of make this car affordable to more people. Getting a 400 horsepower car for this price is really not seen anywhere else in the market. So it was a lot of tuning that went in to help manage the added weight. But we did little things like the casing and then as well as the hood to kind of help mitigate that the best we could.
Melissa, a couple of questions on the performance trim. They're fairly quick ones, I think. One is you have different size front and rear tires on that vehicle. And I understand there's a benefit to handling, at least that's my assumption, but it's also a bit of a pain in the tail when it comes to when an owner wants to rotate or eventually replace them. So I assume the benefit outweighs the negative on the different size tires on the performance.
Yes, we do consider, cost of ownership and those sorts of things, but we felt that for the performance grade, it's called the performance grade, so we really wanted to maximize the performance of the vehicle. Our base grade does have a score setup, so it's I believe it's 245s front and rear, and so that's also an option as well. And we do find that a lot of people sometimes they'll change their tire sizes and stuff once they get the car anyways, but we felt that this was the best setup to maximize the performance.
The other thing, and this amuses me a little bit, but you have both active noise cancellation and active sound enhancement on that vehicle. So you're canceling out unwanted noises and you're enhancing those that you think the customer will appreciate, like the engine sound?
Yes. Yeah. That's essentially what it is. I'm not an expert in the NVH field, but generally speaking, when we do our evaluations, we want to minimize sounds that people don't like. And, I think in this segment, in the sports cars, it's a very emotional sort of segment in terms of when you drive the car. You want to smile, you want to get excited, you want to kind of, really feel it in your body and your heart rate and everything. And you get a lot of that through sound, through good sound, exciting sound, right? So, we felt this was a great way. And a lot of the vehicles in this segment, do similar things as well. But we really wanted to add to the excitement of you're driving this car, you hear it, you feel it, you're integrated with it. And we really wanted to kind of bring that home, that experience home to our customers.
One of the things I love that you guys did is put a manual in this car. And it's got rev matching, which I personally do not like. And like I said, I got to drive the car briefly, but not enough. Can you turn off the rev matching?
In the manual? Yes, it actually, I don't know if it's default off, but you have to push it on. So it's only available on the performance grade, or I guess the prototype grade as well. But there's a switch just kind of on the other side of the shift lever. I think it says S mode on it. You push and hold it and that'll turn it on or off. So if you're a purist and you're like, I'm in a heel toe downshift, so I want to do it myself, then you can. But we also wanted to make it accessible for fun driving for those just learning how to, to drive their car in a more sporty sort of way. So it's available if you want it, but it's also, you don't have to turn it on if you prefer to manually do it yourself.
Yeah, I am one of those purists who loves heel and toe and rev matching on my own.
Yes.
It's part of the enjoyment of owning a manual transmission car. Do you know what the market research says? Do What do your customers tell you about rev matching and the like? And I think you made a really good point that for somebody who's just learning how to use a manual and how to downshift and all that, it's a great learning tool. But I'm just wondering, do you have any customer feedback on what your customers think about it?
I haven't looked up that topic specifically, but I do know, at least talking with different people around the office, some people are purists, they have track experience. So like for me, I prefer to not have it on because there's nothing better than just getting that heel to downshift perfectly before a corner. It's
good for you, Melissa. I knew I liked you.
Yeah. So I get it. I'm totally with you there. But, we wanted to make this car accessible, not just for the ultra wealthy. So we wanted to keep the price point reasonable, but we also wanted to invite a lot of people into the sports car driving realm. So the purists, the enthusiasts, they can turn it off and they can heel to downshift till the cows come home and they can just love it. But those who are just starting, we do want to make it accessible. And that's kind of why we have the launch control to maximize your quarter mile or 0 to 60 time if you're not that expert driver and you can't perfectly get the balance between grip and tire spin and everything. So we just want to make it fun for everybody. And if you want to do everything manually yourself, it's there. But if you want a little bit of assistance and still have fun, no judgments, please enjoy. We just want you to really love driving our car.
And you do offer the 9-speed automatic, so let's not lose sight of that.
Yes, we absolutely do that too. And we have paddle shifting with that as well, so you can manually shift. And with that, we have 2 drive modes. We have standard and sport mode. So you can adjust that, and it has adaptive shift control. So based on your driving style and your driving inputs, the vehicle will then respond in kind. So if you're just driving comfortably down the road and you're trying to get to work, it'll have a more comfortable shift schedule. So we'll keep your RPMs a little bit lower. And it's still very responsive, but you're not going to get rev matching downshifts as you're braking to make a left turn into the office. But if you're starting to get into a windy section, if you're driving on a long road and you have a road trip and you have a nice little windy section, it'll kind of be like, oh, a little aggressive, throttle inputs, and ooh, there's a little more lat G. So hey, okay, they want to have a little fun. Let's downshift a little bit. Let's kind of get those RPMs up. And so we do have an adaptive shift control in both the standard and sport mode. It will do some rev matching downshifts too, which is always lovely to hear, even in the automatic if you're not doing it yourself. But it's still a lot of fun, and the vehicle will then respond to you because we really wanted to make it like a partnership. I don't know if you've heard Tamura-san talk about the car, but we wanted it to be like a dance partner. And if you're having a good dance partner, it's all about good communication and good feedback and good response. So, the car responds very well. I think it's very communicative. And, when you're driving it at limit, it kind of lets you know, hey, I'm kind of there. And it's very receptive to any sort of counter steer or feedback. It's very predictable. But also, when you're driving, you're telling the car, hey, I want to have a little more fun here. It goes, okay, let's have some fun. And then it'll adjust the shift matching, the shift mapping to give you a little bit more of a spirited drive. So we really wanted you to feel like you're with the car, you're together with the car, you're kind of one. You're not just in the car, then you have to make all these adjustments every time you want to do something a little bit different. So we wanted to really build that communication and integration between car and driver.
So to what extent is the car set up for twists and turns and driving versus straight line speed and performance?
So I think we have a good balance between the two. So, we do offer the launch control, and, we have a 400 horsepower engine, twin turbo. So it's definitely great for those straights, but we did spend a lot of time in the chassis tuning as well. We worked a lot with our team here in Arizona and a lot of discussions with Japan to get that fun spirited sense to the driver as well. So I think it would be great if you want to drive the car, it's fun. If you want to have winding road car time, that's fun. I'm more of a winding road kind of person, but it's really a lot of fun in every sense. So I do have to say, every time I use launch control, I do giggle a little bit. So that is pretty fun. The powertrain engineer always laughs at me because whenever we have to do something, and I'm always laughing. So it's a good time.
This may be more product planning than engineering, but I would love to get your engineering take on it. The car definitely is great that it has intelligent cruise control, but it does not have any kind of lane keeping or lane centering. And I don't know why. Nissan ProPilot is so good. Why would this car not have it at least available, if not standard? Is there an engineering reason for that?
I don't think there would be an engineering reason why we couldn't apply it to the car. Not that I am aware of, but that decision was made from the product planning side. So I don't know. There might be some technical reason. I wasn't part of that discussion. So
I know it adds cost because you need more equipment, you need more sensors, cameras, and stuff. So there's a cost
it
factor.
also does that. It also adds weight as well. And also, this is a performance vehicle, so I don't know if that was also included in the discussion as well. I don't really want to speculate on that since I wasn't part of it. But to my knowledge, there's no engineering reason outside of whether or not we had the real estate or the desire to add the weight and all of the sensors and cameras and such.
That was really my only disappointment in the roughly 2-hour drive I got in it last week, and I didn't have much else to complain about. But I'm a little spoiled now. When you're on a freeway and you like to have it center for you, it's nice to have a vehicle that does that. And I was a little let down by that. Not much else.
Yeah, our ProPilot Assist system is wonderful. I worked on that a little bit as well, and I have nothing but great things to say about it. So I appreciate the positive feedback on that one. But definitely hear your comment, and I can pass that along to.
Whoa, hold on, Melissa, because I'm one of those people who hate it. So that's what Gary just said. That adds a numbness to the steering. I despise. I like the adaptive cruise if I'm in traffic, but other than that, especially in a sports car. So forget what Gary said for the moment.
Man, you're killing me. I'm trying to be political here. So.
But if it has that feature, you can choose to use it or not.
Well, that's true.
Sometimes I like to use it, in various situations, cruising on a freeway, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So, Melissa, in all your chassis tuning and all that, aerodynamics plays a role. Are there any specifics that you can tell us about the aerodynamics that you guys played around with on the car?
So aerodynamics is done completely outside of my group. So I can't speak specifically to how they developed or how they kind of did all the analysis and choosing the different body lines. But I did know they did a lot of work on that. One thing to note is the door handles on the side of the vehicle. That's more of a flush mount now, and I know that was an area they worked really hard on to kind of really improve the airflow over that area. Also, kind of the rear fender area as well. The convergence point between the air going over the fender and then the back hatch. They really wanted to streamline that conversion point as well.
So the package that Japan gave you was pretty good to begin with. You guys didn't encounter any kind of lift or anything like that had to be changed.
No, a lot of that was done in Japan. They did all their testing. To my memory, there was no specific issue with that one. But they do a lot of testing in Japan beforehand. So I can't say what was done before we received a super early kind of Frankenstein prototype vehicle back in the day. But I can't really comment on that.
That's fine.
Yeah. I apologize.
No, do you have a drag coefficient number?
Oh, I'm so bad at remembering little specs like this. I do know we have it, but I can't remember it offhand. I remember it was quite similar to the 370 though.
I just didn't see it in the press release anywhere. So.
I don't know if we've released that number specifically. I do remember it was extremely close to that, to the 370s. So I apologize. I can't I'm so bad at remembering all these little numbers for everything. It's not my strong suit. I apologize.
No worries.
But we can get that to you after. We have someone from Corpcom listening in on this recording, and so I can get that number to her, and I can have her pass it along to you guys.
Great. Well, looks like we used up the first segment of the show here. Melissa, I really want to thank you for coming on. Great car. I think it's very smart the way that Nissan has approached developing and making the car look and all. My guess is you guys are not going to have a problem selling these things.
Yeah, we're extremely proud of what we put out, and it was a big team effort from everyone from Japan, and then on the U.S. side, we put a lot of time and effort into this, and we're really proud of it, and so we're really excited for people to start buying these.
Very good.
I think it's great how enthusiastic you are about this. This is wonderful.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be. I mean, I have a lot of people at work who are like, let me know if you don't want to work on Z anymore. I mean, it's pretty much a program everybody wants to work on. No, I mean, our other programs are great. We make some wonderful cars. But
this one's special.
It's a special car. So, I mean, it's hard not to be excited about the product. And, it's a driver's car. And if you're just learning to drive high performance, it's there for you too. And anyone can have fun in it. We made it, great cost for what you get. And we hope lots of people buy it.
Very good. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back to talk about more things going on in the automotive industry. But Melissa, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll see the rest of you audience on the other side of the break.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye. Thank you.
The next generation compounds in Bridgestone tires give them responsive handling at high speeds. We could show you the data on that, or you could just feel it. What really matters is they're Bridgestone.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry.
There are a few key reasons to start a business in Michigan. First of all, it's the talent. Second, Michigan is wired for winning. Third, the ecosystem here is really focused on supporting businesses in the market.
Okay, we're back. So Gary Witzenburg, yeah, I hate those centering things. They add such a numbness to the steering. Usually the first thing I do when I get in a car is look for the button to turn it off.
It depends for me how well it works. Some work much better than others. You don't want it ping-ponging back and forth, but some of them do an excellent job. And I won't go through a long story, but I was a couple years ago, I was driving back from an event where I ended up taking a fall in the pit of a race course and sprained my wrists. And it was great by coincidence, having a press vehicle that would do that for me, because it hurt me literally to steer the car. And this vehicle I was driving did a great job. But I do like that only in the situation where you just want to relax, keep your distance from the vehicle ahead, and not have to worry about lane keeping. It does it for you. That's the only time I use it and appreciate it.
Okay, next time I sprain my wrist, I'll keep it in mind.
It's the sprain your wrist option.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of hurting oneself when one's driving, NHTSA came out with some rather shocking numbers this week of approximately 43,000 people died in motor vehicle crashes last year, a 10.5% increase over the previous year. And what's really surprising is that in every category they looked at, I mean, it's just like things were up. Multi-vehicle crashes up 16%, urban roads up 16%, drivers above 65 up 14%, pedestrians 13%. Fatalities involving at least one large truck. I like that, at least one large truck. There could be 3 large trucks, 8 large trucks, but that was up 13%. Daytime up 11%. Motorcycles 9%. Bicyclists up 5%. What's going on here? People suddenly getting back out in the world and just forgetting how to drive, spraining their wrists? What?
No, this country's gone crazy ever since COVID hit. I mean, people are distracted. They're driving like maniacs. And it's not just car accidents. We see it in all kinds of other statistics, shootings, crime. I mean, I'd love to see what's going on with traffic accidents in the rest of the world, not just the US. But I'm shocked at these figures. The auto industry keeps putting more and more safety equipment on these cars, and yet accidents and fatalities are going up. It's not supposed to be this way. And we've just come off several decades of ever decreasing, not just accidents, but the fatality rate, per mile, for 100 million miles driven has been going down. And now I don't know. It's just nuts what's going out on the roads these days.
Let me make a couple points on the other side of that. First of all, buried in the release and in any press coverage after the sensationalistic headline is the fact that the rate of fatalities per mile or per 100,000 miles or whatever actually went down slightly from 20 to 21. So more miles driven, slightly fewer fatalities. And that's somehow de-emphasized, because if you think about 2020, that was mostly, shut down, a lot less people going to work, a lot fewer people on the roads. And now with a lot more in 2021, the rate has stayed pretty much level. It's actually it was 1.33 versus 1.34 the previous year. The other thing is they never break down, and Gary, you have percentage increases, I noticed. But in the press release and in the news coverage, they never say, well, how many of these fatalities are actually vehicle occupants? How many are pedestrians? How many are motorcyclists? How many are farmers on tractors and, snowmobilers and people in horse and buggies in Amish country? You never get that breakdown. And so there's no question it's gone up in terms of numbers, but I don't see a real problem, at least between these 2 years, in terms of rate. And one other thing I think on the negative side of this, to me, this release is calculated to bring a lot more of what the people who run government, and I won't say anything more about them, but think is a good way to reduce fatality. So I think it becomes a really good justification for more red light cameras, more speed cameras, more speed humps, vision zero, all of that stuff, which is mostly about revenue, not safety. And this is just the preliminary way to say, okay, let's do a whole bunch more to make driving a lot less enjoyable and not necessarily more safe.
All good points, and especially on the fatality rate. I didn't realize that it had gone down. Yeah. Even so,
but wait. That's 0.01 is the difference. Okay, so that's why it's not a headline. We don't even notice the 0.01.
Yeah, but it's down, not up from the
right.
The COVID
year. So it's
that's like, an important point. But I would think, with more new cars on the road, with ever more structure in them for side impact, rollover, whatever, automatic emergency braking, pedestrian detection, blind spot detection, rear cross traffic alert, and all that stuff, the number should be going down. Not just the rate, the whole number should be going down.
They also speculate without data that, it's impaired driving, it's speeding, it's reckless driving.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the data on that. In my mind,
I would too. I agree, Gary. That they don't. They're just sort of guessing at it. But I think we all see every single day more people who are driving distracted. And I think that's probably the real culprit.
Yeah, we agree on that. I think it's distracted driving, and I think it's also realistically with the fewer police out there and pressure on police not to do their jobs, because all of a sudden that becomes dangerous for them. If they stop somebody, they might get shot. I see less enforcement. And in my mind, that's a good thing, because I don't need more enforcement, but it's not a good thing in the overall picture of traffic safety. I think those are the two big factors. There's fewer police out there making stops or observing, and there's a lot more distraction through cell phones and other things.
All right. So to be fair here, speeding, only a 5% increase. Alcohol related, only a 5% increase. Okay. Okay. But Gary, you and I have spent hours and hours and hours driving together. You are a fantastic driver. You've raced cars. I spent a lot of time with you. And I mean, from your point of view, as a guy who has learned to drive so very well, I mean, what do you think is necessary in order to have, other people have some skills that will keep that number from going up without relying on, all the technology that John mentioned is being thrown into cars. I mean, do you think that driver education is sufficient in this country?
No, and that's another big factor in my mind. There used to be, and I don't have any detail or data on this, but there used to be high school driver education that was pretty almost worthless. I mean, they would put you through a course, and you'd have to pass a test, and you might get a little bit of road time. But can you imagine if you're out there on today's freeways, be it Detroit or LA or anywhere, and all the complexity of what's going on with people coming in and going out and crossing lanes in front of you, and all that you have to have literally eyes all around you to anticipate and see what other people are doing. Do you think at 16 or 17 years old, most people are prepared to deal with that? Because they have almost no training, skid control training, accident avoidance training, like you would get in Bondurant or one of those schools, and very few people pay the money to get that. It's so important. And also one other thing is that if you grow up as a kid and you get your driver's license, and who is your role model? If your dad or your mom are terrible drivers, that you're going to pick up the same habits. And you see people tailgating, they don't understand stopping distances, where if the car ahead of them jams on the brake suddenly, they're driving through the trunk before they realize it's happening. That kind of training, not just classroom, but actual in-vehicle training. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's a big factor. That I think most drivers out there are just not well trained or well capable of handling any kind of traffic complexity or emergency situations.
Yeah, look, I've written editorials over the years on the need for better training, and it should be a la race school driving kind of level of experience. I gave up on that. It's never going to change. It just hasn't. The only good idea, and I mean, I almost say this half facetiously, turn it into a video game. Be able to score points by driving right, and you accumulate points, and you win silly prizes online or something like that. I honestly believe it's the only way to get people to start obeying traffic laws and driving decently.
Hasn't most of the what was rudimentary classroom training in high schools actually gone away now for budget reasons?
High schools can't afford to do that anymore. Yeah. They dropped it years ago.
Yeah.
It's a real serious problem, and education would go a long way to fixing it, I think. And as you say, John, is this going to happen? Probably not. So we're going to
not going to happen
with these numbers, and so it goes. So speaking of numbers, one of our favorite topics, Elon Musk, when he wasn't talking about Twitter, came out and said that for the Cybertruck, they're going to stop taking reservations from outside North America. They will continue to take reservations within North America. And I looked that there was a crowdsourced reservation tracker. It has the reservations for the Cybertruck at 1.4 million vehicles. And Elon went on to say something to the effect of, when he starts building them, it would take him 3 years to get through the list. And I was figuring, okay, if you have a run rate in your factory of 250,000 vehicles a year, it would take 5.6 years to get to 1.4 million. Okay. Then I started thinking that for the Ford Lightning, they had to shut down the reservations because they got so many, 200,000 people put their $100 down because they wanted to get a Lightning. Is this a new phenomenon whereby people are, standing in line for vehicles that they, that either don't exist at all or that are not coming for some period of time?
Do those reservations carry a deposit with them? Do you have to put money down to make a reservation? I doubt it. Really?
$100.
Yeah, but it's fully refundable too.
It is refundable.
If you say, screw it, give me my money back, they'll give you your money back.
So that's just, someday I might like to have one of those. I'll invest $100. I know I'll get it back if I need to.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
Well, you're right, except that, Ford probably has a pretty good idea of how many of those reservations it'll turn into orders. And Tesla had probably done, if you got 1.4 million, you can take a small slice of that and it still fills out your plan.
Well, I'd say the Ford number is probably, I put a lot more veracity into that than the Tesla. They have a pretty good idea of what their demand will be, I think. And I'd say that demand is much more serious than the Tesla reservations, quote unquote.
So is this phenomenon something that has to do with the truck architecture, or does it have to do with it being an electric vehicle? Or in the case of the Tesla, is it simply because it's a Tesla, and if he came out with something with 3 wheels or 8 wheels or one wheel, that people would also be standing in line to get one?
All of the above, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They just see it as something that's really cool, and I might like to have one of those. And here's $100, and maybe I'll get one someday.
Right.
But what about the Lightning situation? And I'm sure that the same thing is going to happen. The Silverado EV. I'm sure there'll be a list of people who are going to reserve their spot in line for that as well.
What about
we'll
the Hummer?
See. I mean, the reason Ford cut off orders is because when it got to 200,000, they knew that they could not fill those orders for 2 to 3 years, and they don't want customers getting pissed off that their truck's not ready. So better not to let them down or get them angry. Just tell them, nope, hey, we're not taking any more orders for the time being.
So, Gary, have you had an opportunity to be in the Lightning?
I have, yes. I was on a program, a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it's very impressive. There's not much to say negative about it, except my old bugaboo is the public charging thing. And if you're using it to haul a lot of stuff or tow a lot of stuff, and say you're going to go camping or fishing or hunting or something, is there going to be charging there at the campsite? I don't think so. Or if it is, it's going to be slow, not very fast. So I think that's an issue for anything that's electric. But it's an issue that should get better as years go on, as there's more public charging available. But the whole range anxiety thing, I had an experience recently myself with range anxiety, which I won't go into, but the range gauge tells you one thing, then you get on the road and you find out you're using it much faster than the vehicle anticipated. So the range gauge was lying to you because it was seeing a much lower rate of usage before you took your trip than after. And that's going to be an issue with full electric vehicles, but maybe even more so with trucks, especially if you use them as trucks as time goes on.
No, been there. I think everyone who's driven an electric car has run into the same problem that you ran into there, Gary, especially if it's raining and the wipers are on. And anyway, but no, it's clear. I mean, EVs are not for everybody. Not yet. They're not ready yet. For a big chunk of the public, no problem. If you're gonna, just do short routes where you can charge at home every night, they're pretty good. They're actually very, very good. But, to your point, it's going to take some years to build out a charging infrastructure before it's going to appeal to everybody.
Okay, but if EVs are not for everybody, and you look at the amount of investment that OEMs are putting into building EVs, it seems to me that everybody better buy one, or they're going to have a lot of costs that need to be paid back.
Yeah.
Well, look what General Motors has said. Our intention, our goal is to be 100% EV, not including medium and heavy duty trucks. Our intention is to be EV by 2035. Well, that's their intention. The market's going to tell them what to do. And so they're going to put in and are putting in the investment to have a pretty substantial EV fleet. But if the market doesn't go beyond that, they're going to sit on their ICE operations.
I foresee a scenario, and I've said this before to some of you, but the market supply, maybe starting fairly soon, maybe 2023 next year, is going to far exceed the demand. There's going to be so many electric vehicles and really good electric vehicles out there. So the supply might be 30, 40, someday 50%, and the demand might be still 15 or 20 at best. And so then what happens? They stop making those. They put a lot of money on the hood to try to get rid of them, or do they sit around for 2 or 3 years before they find buyers? I mean, your point, Gary, about the investment is a big one. I think it's a big risk for automakers to be going so far, so fast toward full electric before the market is anywhere near ready for it.
So Gary, what is your sense of what the real demand would be for electric vehicles, say in 2025?
Well, that's only 3 model years away, actually 2, because it's almost 2023 now. So I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be 30%. I think it's going to be, what is it today now? 5?
4.5 as of last month. It was 4.5%.
Yeah,
and it's largely, in my opinion, being driven by the high gas prices right now, and that may continue into the future. But that's not necessarily people buying them just because they got to have them, but maybe they say, well, it's a better thing than having a gas car. So I think that's a little artificially. So in 2-3 years, 10%, 12, 15, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the lots are going to be full of them, in my opinion. And the investment's going to be there. And the demand, even at high gas prices, probably will not be catching up for some time.
So speaking of another EV company, I thought this was sort of interesting that Rivian apparently is having an issue with Commercial Vehicle Group, which is providing the seats that go into the Amazon delivery vans, for which Rivian has an order from Amazon for 100,000 units. And oh, by the way, Amazon owns 18% of Rivian. And it's sort of this tit for tat that apparently, Rivian said that the supplier now is inflating the price for the seats, and this isn't fair, and that it can't sustain that. And I just thought it was interesting that we talked some weeks ago about how RJ Scaringe had to apologize to people who had already gotten their reservations in for the vehicles when he raised the prices. Is this a case where suddenly the new startups are having the sort of experiences that are typical of the conventional OEMs in terms of supplier relations?
Well, look what just happened at Stellantis. Earlier this year, Stellantis changed what they call their terms and conditions on their contracts of how suppliers have to deal with Stellantis. It demanded immediate price cuts. It wanted any intellectual property that a supplier developed on any Stellantis component, making it easier to manufacture or whatever. Stellantis wanted to own all that. And so how did suppliers respond? And I know because I talked to 2 CEOs at supplier companies on this. They stopped bidding on new business at Stellantis. Yeah. And, the Great Recession wiped out a lot of tier 2 and 3 suppliers, created a lot of consolidation at the tier 1 level. It's not like an automaker can say, oh, you don't want to supply me seats? Okay, I'm going over here. Them days is gone. And so what did Stellantis have to do? They fired their head of purchasing, and they went back to the suppliers and said, okay, we're going back to the old contracts. That's what Rivian's running into right now. Shipping costs have gone up, raw material costs have gone up, labor costs have gone up. And here's the supplier saying, hey, I can't make money shipping you these seats at the old price. Here's the new price. And Rivian, which to your point, Gary Vasilash, happily raised the prices of its vehicles $10,000 to $12,000, doesn't want to pay more for seats. And the new reality is, my bet, this supplier is going to win. There's going to be some sort of accommodation adjustment, but you watch, that supplier is going to get a price increase.
Well, if you think about it, you can't do a new vehicle if you're missing one major part.
Right.
I mean, even computer chips. Oh, you want a new whatever vehicle, you'll take it without seat warmers because we don't have that chip in stock, and maybe we'll get it for you later and have a dealer installation. So whatever component or element or subsystem a supplier's providing, you're out of business if you can't get it. So they're kind of driving the truck right now, I think.
So John, is this going to be an argument for more vertical integration among OEMs who are basically going to say, we're going to make more of our major big stuff? I mean, car companies used to make their own seats, right? I mean, that was a very common thing for them to do.
Yeah, way back in the day. I mean, that went away a long time ago. Look, here's the advantage of buying stuff from a supplier. Let's use seats. There's a company, they live, breathe, and die seats. They know more about seats than any automaker is ever going to know about seats. And they make seats for everybody so they can amortize their cost over a much greater production run. Meanwhile, if you're an EV startup, do you really want to be investing in seats? Really? I mean, isn't batteries and inverters and electric motors, and that's where you want to put all your money. And so even though there's talk of greater vertical integration, I did a deep dive into the financials of Volkswagen and Toyota. They have the greatest volume of any automakers in the world. They also are, amongst traditional automakers, the most highly vertically integrated. And yet, companies like GM and Ford make more profit per unit. They make more profit per employee than Toyota and Volkswagen do. Toyota and Volkswagen make up on volume. They sell so much that they have bigger profits, but not on a per unit basis, not on a per person basis. And so that kind of argues to me that maybe scale and vertical integration isn't as great as it's built out to be.
So what becomes of companies that have the, and you're a big fan of this, John, the asset light strategy, whereby, they basically take an old warehouse and say, okay, we put the assembly line in there and then we're good to go. We'll get all the parts to come in. If, you have situations where that puts the supplier in the catbird seat.
Well, again, I like asset light strategy for a startup. So instead of pouring $1 billion into a plant, you put $50 million into a plant. And you're a startup. You don't know if everything's going to work great. You don't have a track record. You probably don't have a big order book. So go in, invest a little bit of money, start to make some money. Then you can start dreaming big and build your own $1 billion plant. And yeah, okay, suppliers are in the catbird seat. That's just got to be part of your business plan reality and deal with it.
What's your sense of that, Gary?
I couldn't agree more. I haven't been on the supplier side and I haven't been on the purchasing side, so I'm not an expert on that. But it seems common sense that what I was saying before, if you're shut down because you can't make a deal for seats or chips or whatever, or the supply chain can't get them to you in time or whatever, what are you going to do? Whether you're a startup or a major OEM, you got to pretty much pay what, you're going to negotiate a price, but it's not going to be what you'd prefer, I guess, if you're going to keep building vehicles and shipping them to dealers.
And like I said, the world has changed. There's not this excess amount of capacity in the supply industry anymore. That went away with the Great Recession. And so suppliers have far more clout now than they have at any time that I can remember.
See, I would argue that the excess capacity went away back in the days of Ignacio Lopez before that, where basically they were saying, okay, we're going to be, have these reverse auctions. We're going to go to the lowest bid. Therefore, you have the consolidation because suppliers just couldn't keep in business unless.
Yeah, I think you're right, Gary Vasilash. That's when it really started. But, in Yaki, that was the early 90s. Now we've had 2-3 decades of this consolidation. And like I said, the Great Recession wiped out so many tier 2 and 3 companies that were absorbed by tier 1s that the tier 1s are in a pretty powerful position right now. They're not driving the bus. The OEMs, the car companies, are still the drivers of the bus. But their new reality is, and we can see it just in the last week of Stellantis having to fire its head of purchasing and back off on its new terms and conditions. It shows the power that they've got right now. That never would have happened in the past.
Well, plus the suppliers have the expertise, as you pointed out, John, about the seats. I mean, whatever the component or subsystem is, they're the experts at doing it much more than even a major OEM, let alone a startup. So you're not going to vertically integrate much that you're not already doing. It's major investment to try to take more of it in-house where you've got the expertise out of house.
Right.
Yeah, this is why I wonder when you hear OEMs saying, that we want to get into the chip business, we want to, so we'll be protected. Do they really have the intellectual property necessary to do that? Because I'm sure that Intel and NVIDIA and all, other companies, know how to do that. And this is something outside their sphere. Or you're looking at, the joint ventures that, Ford and General Motors are having with, LG and SK in terms of making batteries, which is a new thing. Is this a way to protect them from some of the, negative consequences of, sudden shortages in terms of semiconductor chips or just flat out shortages in terms of batteries?
Yeah, look, this is new technology where it really does behoove the automakers to at least do some amount of production in-house. One of the important things for any car company is to really understand the technology that's going into its cars. And if all you do is buy a black box from a supplier, you really don't know what's inside or what makes it tick. And in fact, when you go to figure out what you should be paying for this thing, if you have no knowledge of how it works or how it goes together, boy, you've just surrendered all your bargaining power on to the supplier. So especially when there's a shortage of chips, when there's a shortage of battery cells, it behooves an automaker to take some of this production in-house so that it protects itself to some degree, but even more importantly, learns what this technology is all about.
Don't agree with Gary. Say something different. Just you don't know what you're talking about, McElroy.
Well, the only thing that the OEMs can hope for is some competition among between suppliers with equivalent expertise and quality, that they can have a little bit of a bidding process and not be stuck with a singles source.
Right. That's right.
All right, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, we've come to the top of the show here. But Witzenburg, so great to see you, and thanks for coming on the show with us.
Well, thank you. I always enjoyed doing it. So anytime, especially if you're talking about something I actually know something about.
It's a deal. Okay. Goodbye to both of Gary's and also to the audience. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey. Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.